Two-character play?
Two-character play.
I'm gonna just say one thing and then I'm gonna turn it over to you.
All right.
There are some Tennessee Williams plays, such as Not About Nightingales,
which I love.
which you don't see that often, and it's really a shame because they're wonderful
Little
plays.
Jewels, right.
And there are some Tennessee Williams plays that you don't see that often because, frankly, despite the fact that they're written by Tennessee Williams, they're not all that good.
Well, you could have held that until I said my piece, because that's really a summation, but I'll get started if you don't mind. Two-character play.
Guess what category this one is in?
And two-character play has an interesting cover because it's two guns, barrel to barrel, and the knuckles on one hand say love, and the knuckles on the other hand say hate. Well, and they stole that right out of the Robert Mitchum movie. Cape Fear? No, yeah, whatever that movie was where Robert Mitchum wore that. Anyway, but the point is that this is all over the place. It was written in 1970. In 1969, our dear Tennessee Williams had a breakdown. He was confined for 3 months. He had a sister named Rose, as we all know, whom he romanticized in Glass Menagerie. And this is about a brother and a sister, and this is a sister who's been in the loony bin. So how much autobiographical stuff is the man himself, the character Felice, who's played by Brad Dourif, and the character of Claire, who's played by the incredible Amanda Plummer, are in an old house that may or may not have been their old house, or maybe a stage set, or maybe the inside of Tennessee Williams' mind. You can kind of write your own scenario about what this is, because it's all over the place, and he was, I think, not altogether when he wrote it. That being said, it also came at a time when William's star was very much in the descendant, if there is such a statement. It may have been his attempt to write something Beckett-like, Beckettian, as it were. And then again, but the director, I've never heard of him before, Jean David Kirk, who is from London and runs a theater company over there and has won a lot of awards, did a very credible job, I think, of holding. I don't know about Brad Dourif. Brad Dourif was always a cult-like figure and an oddball actor. But Amanda Plummer is really off the wall. She's never played normal characters in any way that I can ever remember. She just was never a girl.
Eliza Doolittle.
Did she do Eliza? I don't remember.
She did.
Okay. It must have been interesting.
In Pygmalion.
Oh, in Pygmalion, not I was
not in My Fair
Lady,
no.
Yeah, I think we had this conversation before and it just went right out of my head. But that said, it's very interesting that the older she gets, the more she looks like her father. Her mom was... her
father is Christopher Plummer, and I am blanking out on her mom.
Her mom was
a fairly prominent actress.
A musical comedy star, and I think she was in Thoroughly Modern Millie and a bunch of other things. It's a shame that I can't remember her name because that's really bad on me. But she doesn't look like her mom, who was attractive in a sort of an off-kilter way, and her father is very handsome, but for a girl to look like that is not So there are the two of them nattering around. It could be sort of like if they were in ash cans, you know exactly what the story was supposed to be, a nod to Beckett. I agree with you. I mean, you summed it up before you gave me a chance to talk about it, but it's not that it's bad. It's that it doesn't know what it wants to be. It came out of a time period when the Tennessee Williams kind of plays that we love were not popular, and instead Beckett and people like Albee and that sort of thing had come along, and in London all the kitchen sink plays, and they'd sort of taken away from his prominence and his, so it's just it's a very sad story in the play, and it's a sad time in Williams' life, and the play is still running. So, and it just let out a whole new set of tickets. So I think that's great for the people who are putting it together. I know Jamie DeRoy, who's a friend of ours, is one of the producers, so shout out to Jamie. And good on them for doing it. They took a big chance doing it. I didn't think it was going to run. It got very mixed reviews, and look at, hey, there it is.
Wonderful that it's running. It's wonderful. I think Tennessee Williams, certainly his star, has risen quite high. He does not have to do his plays in ash cans or anything like that. He's the prominence, and I think, personally, I prefer the works of Tennessee Williams to the works of Sam Beckett. That said, Tennessee Williams is not a very good Sam Beckett. He's a great Tennessee Williams.
Yes, I agree.
And I love Amanda Plummer. I was so excited about getting the chance to see her because it's been a long time since I've seen her in anything. You know, I think she goes, you go all the way back to the original cast of Agnes of God.
Yes, exactly.
With her, and she's a wonderful actress, and she does what she can with this, but
well,
again,
they both do. They throw their all into it. I mean, they
throw their
act all over the place.
But this really, I didn't enjoy the play, and I can only give it 2 playbills.
I because of my theater, you know, both the directing and acting background, I think I took myself away from the play, and I watched 2 actors at the height of their power, because Brad Dourif has done some wonderful film work. I don't remember him on the stage. Really just chewing the scenery, having a great high old time running around. And I think, as I say, I think I saw this once, to be honest. I think I saw it in some, you know, off-Broadway production, and I know I didn't like it. Then I liked it more this time because of all the ancillary things that were going on, the people who were in it, and, you know, I just had a better time. I didn't have a great time, so I would give it, you gave it 2.5?
I gave it 2.
2. I'd give it 2.75. How's that?
All right, that's fine.
Okay.
Now let's talk about the Irish Repertory Company and the Weir, and you're going to tell me what Weir means.
Okay, well, the Weir, I believe, is the place around which, if you look at the picture, it's the outside of where the bar is, and it's where the stories tend to come from. And there may be a note in here. I mean, they tell us in the play, and here it is. The play was inspired by my blah, 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 blah. Weir. Wait, doesn't say. It's Connor McPherson, by the way. I don't remember what they said it was. That's terrible. We're going to have to go look it up. Because we want to have the artistic directors of the Irish Rep come and talk to us another night. But anyway, so do you want me to talk about the play, or do you want me to?
Okay, well,
I thought you were going to introduce it.
Okay. Well, it takes place in a pub or a bar, and a bunch of people, you know, from the town coming and basically telling stories with a newcomer, a young, well, not so young, a lady played by Mary McCain, and she is the only woman in the show, and so she kind of, I don't want to say sets off a rivalry, but she kind of does, and she adds a little flair to the play, and her story, when she gets around to it, is probably the most potent part of the play for me.
I did a good job at DCU. I had gone back to work after having my daughter, Neve. My husband teaches engineering at DCU. We had Neve in 1988, and I went back to work when she was 5, when she started school. And we'd leave her with Daniel's parents, my husband's parents. And his mother always picked her up from school, and I'd collect her after work. And last year she was dying to learn how to swim. And the school had a thing. They'd take the class down to the CRC in Clontarf on Wednesdays. She was learning very well, no problem, loved the water. She couldn't wait for Wednesdays and swimming. Daniel used to take her to the pool on Saturdays and everything. But for such a bright, outgoing, happy girl, she was a big M. She had a problem sleeping at night. She was afraid of the dark. She never wanted you to leave the room. One of us would have to lie there with her until she went off, and even when she did, she'd often have to come in and sleep with us. And I'd say to her, "What's wrong when you go to bed?" But in the daytime, you know, she wouldn't care. Nighttime was a million miles away, and she wouldn't think about it. But at night, there were people at the window, there were people in the attic, there was someone coming up the stairs, there were children knocking in the wall, and there was always a man standing across the road who she'd see. Like, there were loads of things. I wanted to bring her to the doctor, but Daniel said she'd grow out of it, and we should be careful just about books we got her and what she saw on the telly and all of this. But I mean, she used to even be scared that when she got up in the morning that Mammy and Daddy would have gone away and she'd be in the house on her own. It was when she told Daniel's mother. And all the furniture and carpets and everything would be gone. I mean, you know, so I told her after that, you know, we'd never, you know, it was ridiculous. And that if she was worried at all during the day to ring me, and I'd come and get her, and there was nothing to worry about. And she knew our number. She was very good at learning numbers off and everything. She knew ours and her nana's and mine at work. She knew them all.
the problem that I had with this play is that most of the time it did not get my attention. I had a lot of trouble focusing on it. You could argue, yes, there are some good performances. Yes, it is nicely directed. On the other hand, if I have trouble focusing on it, if I am not paying attention to the story, then I have to say it's, even though it's technically you can say it's good, you can, tell me, well, as a director and an actress, I really can admire what they did, and I can tell you, well, as an audience, I didn't, except for the ending part where she tells this rather chilling and, wonderfully involving what ends as a ghost story, but what begins as a very sad part of her life, explaining why she has come to town.
I have to tell you, I did back in the day when I used to work for Theatre Mania, and I did interviews all the time. I got to interview Conor McPherson. I did it twice, and he loves ghost stories. He did a movie with Kieran Hines that was a ghost story. He did a play about a wife being hung on the back of a door that was a ghost story. So he loves his ghosts, and we can't say more than that because we'll spoil everything about what it's about. But what it's really about is, it's a place where the Irish guys get together. It's the neighborhood pub. The regulars come in. They ask for a small one and another small one and another small one. I don't want to have to reiterate how much I hate plays about the Irish who only drink, but there they go. It's the Irishman writing the play. So, anyway,
and it's an Irish theater company.
And it's an Irish theater company. So and an Irish director. So I'm just going to have to stop talking about that, I guess. But it's beautifully done. You get the sense of the set is fantastic. Hopefully we're going to shoot our scene on. You'll see the set when we do that, and you'll see the set in our little bit of B-roll. But every piece on that set is like from a real. You just walk in there, you could feel it. You could taste the alcohol in the air, and the guys know each other very well, and they just talk about what's going on. When the woman comes, they top each other, and they're different ages. There's a young handyman and an older man, and the guy who's taking her around, who's a big shot in the town, and then this nice-looking, woman, Mary McCann, as you said, and what happens is they start to do what guys do, and there's a woman in the room. They start to try to be better than each other. They're topping each other. So what they're doing it is by telling stories. Right. And of course, as you said, she tops them all with her story. But Conor McPherson and a couple of other Irish writers have started doing this. They're almost like, it's not in this particular case, but they're almost like monologues within a play format. There are a couple of plays where they never talk to each other. There'd be three people on the stage and each tell their story, and they're never talking to each other. Right. Here they're interacting, and they're interacting magnificently.
Kind of like a reality show, only nobody gets bumped.
I guess. In a way, I know what you're saying. But there's and you see who's going to wind up taking her home, as opposed to, they're all vying for her attention, but there's an obvious choice there. And again, I'll let that one be for somebody else to see. It's been running all summer. It started before the summer. It's going to run all the way through, I think, October. Okay. So if you get a chance, there are some wonderful, wonderful off-Broadway actors who, have also been on Broadway, directed by, and again, Kieran O'Reilly, who's the director of...
Okay. We are running short on time.
Okay. And it was repped by the late Shirley Herz and associates. Shirley was a famous and wonderful old-time press representative, and she just passed away. Yes. And we all wanted...
Shirley was the press representative for many major Broadway shows. But what I really remember about her, and the ironic thing is, I've been doing this for several decades, and Shirley was around well before I was. And that in all the years that I dealt with her office, I very seldom got to speak with her personally, unfortunately. But any time I had to deal with her office, she always had the most pleasant, professional, nice, outgoing people. Exactly, the type of person you want to deal with. So when I would get a press release about a show and I said to Shirley Herz, I said, wonderful, great. And Peter Cromartie, Peter Sanders, Sam Rudy,
Miller Wright,
unfortunately, who also just passed away well too soon, way too soon. Again, they've carried them. The two Peters have opened their own offices. I think Sam was pretty much running Shirley's office toward the end, and they all, whatever influence she had, you can tell because they run their offices the same way.
She was a mentor.
She was a mentor, but again, she was, I guess mentor isn't real. She was a lady.
I said mentor. I didn't
mentor.
Say
but mentor
but
too.
She was a mentor too, whatever the female version is.
she knew how to deal. She taught them how to deal with people.
Yes.
And how to do it
Appropriately,
nicely.
right, yes.
And to me, that impresses me as much as her theater
Broadway
legacy.
is going to dim the lights in 2 days for her.
After this has
They
been
don't do that for
broadcast.
press agents very often.
Very rarely, but if anyone deserves it,
It was she
does.
certainly.
Okay, moving on very quickly. Occasionally, I like to cross the river and go to New Jersey.
You love to cross the river and go to New
Yes,
Jersey.
I do. Well, especially when I'm going to the Paper Mill Playhouse, and they are doing a Disney play, because a year ago they did Newsies, and guess where it is now? And now they're doing The Little Mermaid. Now, The Little Mermaid was the musical movie, the animated film that put Disney back in the animated film business. It was the start of their second golden age. This is the age that included Beauty and the Beast, Mulan, Aladdin, really some incredible movies. And hold on, here we go. And this was Alan Menken and Howard Ashman did the score. They did Little Shop of Horrors. I think they also did Beauty and the Beast. And
well, it brought
Frank Rich called one of these two films at the time. I forget which one it was. He said it's the best Broadway musical of the season.
That's what I was about to say. He really the Disney people managed to bring in Broadway and did a wonderful thing.
And Glenn Slater has done some of the lyrics for this show. Also, Doug Wright did the book. And
now don't just go over Doug Wright did the book, because that's a big thing.
Well, no, the bigger thing, I think, is the direction by Glenn Castle.
Oh, I see.
Because this is a totally re-envisioned Little Mermaid. It was on Broadway.
Yeah.
It did not do well.
Your daughter and I enjoyed it.
They did, and David Lefkowitz and I reviewed it on Two on the Aisle. We got more responses. We gave it like a mixed review.
Right.
So, and we got more responses on that than anything we've ever done on Two on the Aisle. Here, they've reimagined it. They've gotten rid of the roller skates. In the Broadway production, they had everyone skating. Here, they still have a couple of the eels skating. But what they've done instead is everyone is on wires now and floating through the air.
Oh, wonderful.
And it makes a big difference.
Duh.
The sacrifice, I'm afraid, is Ariel's clamshell bra. She's got a harness, so she's got to wear something a little...
I thought you were going to say she wasn't wearing anything. You said the sacrificing
No. This is Disney.
Right.
You have to have Touchstone.
Absolutely, yes.
Or Splash if you want to see a topless mermaid.
You paste the hair where it needs to go.
Okay. Well, that would be the mermaid in an old animated show called Marine Boy, but we're not going to get into that.
Do I have 2 seconds to match you when you finish with that?
Let me quickly finish this, and then you'll get your 2 seconds. The bottom line is, this is what they should have done on Broadway.
You think they might bring it back?
I hope they do. If they do, I think they would have to beef up the production. The Under the Sea number is much better, but it still needs a lot more, because everyone knows what an incredible number this is. It still doesn't live up to its potential. I would want to tweak the book. The defeat of the Sea Queen, the Sea Witch, by Ariel. In this case, by Ariel. In the movie by Eric, her prince. Is very anticlimactic, so they have to work on that a little.
Anticlimactic?
Anticlimactic. Oh, okay. Anticlimactic. Yes. Okay. Very good.
I'm sorry.
On it, Jessica Grove was Ariel. Alan Mingo Jr. was Sebastian the Crab. Her father, was Edward Watts, who I sympathize a lot more than I did when I saw, because I have a daughter who is about Ariel's age and has a lot of Ariel's attitude, even has her red hair. She went to me with me to it.
She came with me to see the show.
Yeah. So I King Triton, I understand. I really do. And Edward Watts is a wonderful as the he's the kind of father you kind of hope you'd be.
Well, I never hope to be a father.
I hope we have not seen the last of this production.
If it had been, how many playbills would you have given it?
Well, for Broadway, I would say it's a little underproduced, but for Paper Mill, I'd say 4, possibly 4.5, I think.
Okay.
So it's really, it was wonderful. I called up my brother who lives in New Jersey and said, take your kids.
Okay, this summer, I'm going to jump right in. Encores did something brand new. They call it Encores Off-Center, and it's off-Broadway shows, which they've never done before. And I only got to see one. I got to do Cradle Will Rock, which was from the 30s. It's off-Broadway. It never actually appeared in the theater. There are movies about what happened with it. The cast was extraordinary. Danny Burstein, Raul Esparza, Peter Friedman, and Robert Petkoff, and Anika Nani Rose, just to name a few. And the play was a polemic. It was a pro-union, anti-the bosses play in the 30s when this was a very head-banging kind of thing. People got killed over this.
I think John Houseman from Paper Chase was involved in that.
Well, John Houseman produced it. Orson Welles directed it, and the FDA produced the Federal Theatre Company. What was that called?
WPA.
WPA. I'm getting Federal Theatre. And what happened was when the government found out what the money was being spent for, that it was an anti-government play, they pulled the theater. They wouldn't let them take it to the theater. So somehow the incredible Mark Blitzstein, who was the composer, found a theater. They put the show on. They brought it to the theater and asked people to come for nothing. And they had no stage. He just sat on the stage playing on the piano. And supposedly this was all extempore. The actors were in the audience, and when it was their turn, they just stood up from where they were sitting, so they didn't break the rule of they could not put it on in the theater.
But this production, which they did have the actors on stage, how did you like it?
This was just reading, and I was disappointed. I'm so sorry. The story about it is so much more exciting. I will go see Raul Esparza do anything, and he, of course, was the rabble-rouser, the firebrand. And Danny Burstein was Mr., who was the
big
mayor,
boss.
The big boss, yeah, the big cheese. And the characters were clunky, and the script was clunky, and the music, except for one or two numbers, was just grinding like this. So all over, I was so disappointed. I'm sorry.
So the federal government probably should have just
left
it run,
alone, right?
And it would have died on its own. Okay, we're going to end tonight. We also,
but I'm glad they did it.
Yes,
I just wanted to say
theater
that.
company that is still in existence. The York Theatre has given us some wonderful productions of shows such as Merrily We Roll Along. Recently, Closer Than Ever. Currently, they're I'm a Stranger Here Myself, which we enjoyed. We had the opportunity to sit down with James Morgan, the director of the York Theatre, and tell us all about it.
The theater was 5 years old when I first started, and I was 5 years old.
Weren't we all?
Yes. I was just out of college. I moved here from Florida in 1974, and York had been started in 1969. And the spark plug behind it was a wonderful woman named Janet Hayes Walker, who sadly is no longer with us, but my aunt and uncle introduced me to her. They were members of the church where York used to be, up at 5th and 90th Street, the Church of the Heavenly Rest. And Janet loved the fact that I was young and passionate and was a designer. She needed a designer, and I had training in set design and graphic design, and I became her designer for many years and got more and more involved in running the company. But they weren't doing musicals when I got involved, even though Janet had a major background in music and musical theater. She was Barbara Cook's understudy in The Music Man and Julie Andrews' understudy in Camelot. And I said, why aren't you doing musicals? And she said, they're just so difficult. She was also in the original cast of Anyone Can Whistle, and 7 Broadway shows, in fact. And she said they're just so difficult. They were doing what she called classics of all kinds, but it did not include musicals. So we started doing one a year, and then that took off. And this is before Roundabout and Encores, and we were doing very special shows that deserved a second life, like The Grass Harp and The Golden Apple that Janet was also in originally. And began to get a lot of attention, and we did one a year and then 2 a year. And in '92, we moved down here, and the musicals were getting more and more attention, and I suggested in a year or two trying a season of all musicals. And at this point, Janet had been diagnosed with cancer, was fighting it valiantly, as she did everything, and she agreed to the idea of trying a year, and she actually died during that year. But it gave me I was asked to take over. She asked me to take over, and it gave me the confidence to feel that that's what she would want. And for a long time, we did only new shows in our main stage series, but now we do an occasional revival. We had a great big hit last year with Closer Than Ever, which we opened for 5 weeks and ran for 5 months. And a couple of years ago, we had another great big hit with Enter Laughing, which started in the Mufti series. It was a show that we rediscovered and said, no, this is worth doing. And people found it to be hilarious. It should be on Broadway. It's so funny. It shows when you do shows simply and well, you can find all sorts of things in them. The shows in our Mufti series are often shows that have been written off as not being worth doing, or they're written off as being out of date and or too big. We do almost every show with no more than 12 people. We find a way to do these shows that originally had 50 or 60 people in them. Just very simply, you get a flavor. We don't rewrite them unless the writers are around to do that. We've done a number of shows that were rewritten in the course of our Mufti presentation. Betty Comet and Adolph Green did a lot of work with Larry Grossman on Doll's Life, and out of that came a full production that really restored or gave it a reputation that it hadn't had originally. And a number of writers have worked. Joe Stein, we did 7 of Joe Stein's shows, and he worked on several of them, including The Body Beautiful with Bach and Harnick, out of which came the first recording of that ever.
Not only are your sets meticulously designed, but your outer room, your reception area has posters, and I think once you had something where you had to connect the shows with each other?
Yes, that was Musical of Musicals, the musical. And it was a series of like 180 sheet music covers from the collection of Michael Levine, who has one of the biggest, if not the biggest one ever. And the idea was you had to get from one to the next by finding the link. It might be the same poster designer or the same theater or the same music publisher or composer or producer, and people would spend hours trying to connect them. And we had an answer sheet for people who gave up and couldn't get through it. But the best experience was the night Stephen Sondheim came, and he stayed after everyone. It was just Steve and me in the lobby going around, and he did every one of them. And of course, and it got to, one of the jokes was, one of the connections was going from Do I Hear a Waltz to Gypsy. And he turned to me and he said, I want to tell you there is no connection between these two shows.
So it was just a wonderful thing to see James
Yes.
up close and personal, as it were. He's there every night. He introduces every single show that goes on there, and sells cookies as well.
Sells
so,
cookies, yes.
We're
going to end with a few clips from the current York Theatre production. That is the
Storyville.
the birth. It's all about the birth of jazz.
Absolutely.
So enjoy, and when you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me, us too.
On the aisle.
On the aisle.
Where do you go to see a real live show? Where can you see all the freaks for free? Easy Magic Town. And how did you know? Where you never go, if you'll wind up in somebody's bed on stage.